Technology Show. My name is Matt Kirkner, your host for the Tech Ed Podcast, having just awesome conversations here all week long, recording future episodes, live streaming on YouTube. You know, the International Manufacturing Technology Show is where the builders, sellers, and drivers of manufacturing technology come to connect and to be inspired. For the next 30 minutes, give or take, we are going to connect and we are going to be inspired by Becky Goldberg. She is the Director of Education for the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. Becky, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Matt. I've been wowed by everything I've seen so far and excited to have our conversation.
I'm looking forward to it as well. You're doing so many great things in the time that I took to learn a little bit about your organization. We're going to learn a lot more in the next 30 minutes. But start off by just telling our audience, what is the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition? What's your mission? Who are your members? And how do you carry out the vision for the organization?
Yeah, awesome. So the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition operates under the idea of four main pillars that stand for IDEA. So we start with innovation, data, education, and advocacy. So our work crosses borders across Illinois counties. So we serve the entire state of Illinois, and we really focus on how do we create the most diverse and inclusive STEM talent pipeline, both for young and the old. So I particularly work on the education side of things. The education team is actually a 501c3 nonprofit. So we focus on STEM education, and all four of our programs, the STEM Challenge, the Mentor Matching Engine, 6x3 project, and teacher externships, focus on leveraging mentorship to really drive change within our 11 learners. All of our programs really hone in on how we can give students experiential opportunities to get their hands-on approaches to what they can be in the future, specifically for those who've been historically excluded from those populations and those conversations. So within all of our programs, we really work to help students build identity within a STEM capacity, see what their futures can hold, and do that alongside the support of a mentor who's working actively in that field. So really bridging the gap between what's happening in the classroom and what's happening in the field.
And we're going to talk about the value of those mentors as we go on with the discussion here in a little bit. Before we do that, I think a lot of folks, you're a statewide organization, a lot of people don't realize how diverse in so many ways the state of Illinois is, right? So I think about, I live 80 miles north of Chicago, and when a lot of people think about Illinois, they think that Chicago is the whole state, right? So they've been to Chicago, maybe visited, flown through O'Hare on their way to somewhere else, who knows, and they think that's Illinois. That's really not the case, right? I mean, it's diverse in so many ways. Talk about that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially from the education side of things, even before the pandemic, we saw the vast differences when it comes to counties, zip codes, where our students were coming from, where our teachers were coming from. Especially during the pandemic, I think a lot of that was exacerbated to just see these stark differences in where our lack of resources come from or our abundance of them also do. We work with students down from East St. Louis up to North Chicago, over to Rock Island, and of course, wonderful Fulbright in Chicago. But I think overall, innovation has no boundaries. And so when we think about what our future holds, it comes from Peoria, it comes from Decatur, it comes from Chicago. All of those places have students that are eager to connect, to build, to learn, to thrive in whatever setting that they're in. And it's just about providing those connections and those networks and social capital to help them see what they can be, whether that's in Chicago or in other parts of the state. But the state of Illinois, I think as well, really has a rich, expansive network of everything from agriculture to innovation to technology to military defense to healthcare, and it's all over. It isn't just in Chicago.
And I think it's really important for us to underscore that for our listeners. You know, I've done business all over the state. As you may or may not know, I was in the manufacturing world for 25 years, running world-class manufacturing companies. We actually sold a company to a company in St. Louis, right across the river from East St. Louis, right? We had a company that was in the Quad Cities, which is right across from Rock Island, actually Rock Island being part of the Quad Cities. In that particular case, our company was in just outside of Davenport, but that's a community in and of itself. Springfield, Chicago, really, really different areas, and you come up with ways to appeal to a wide range of students across the entire state. One of those ways is the mentor matching machine. The IMTS Smartforce Student Summit is highlighting that initiative here this week at IMTS. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the mentor matching engine was created back in 2012, really recognizing this robust need to bridge the gap again between what's happening in the classroom and what's happening in the real world. But we kind of had to take a step back and say, we want innovative professionals, the busiest people, those that are kind of have their hand in the research, hands in development, product design, to connect with students. We can't expect them to be in the classroom every year. And in order to really move the needle on student transformation, you have to have ongoing opportunities for students to connect, to refine, to iterate, and to build upon their ideas. So the Mentor Matching Engine was born out of that charge. It's a virtual online collaboration tool, which does allow kind of a professional like yourself to connect with a student anytime, anywhere in a safe and secure environment. So the Mentor Matching Engine is built with student safety in mind. All of our mentors go through background checks. We also have oversight on all the projects along with our teachers. So the way that it typically rolls out is we partner with a school or a teacher, someone who's excited to bring a research or problem-based learning component into their classroom. We do a teacher professional development where we look at best practices in research and virtual communication and building workforce skills in the students. And our teachers take that back to the classroom and roll it out to their students. Students then pick a topic, and that topic ranges from manufacturing, AI, robotics, engineering, nanotechnology, social science, LGBTQIA topics, and really everything in between. Our students then onboard to our Mentor Matching Engine and select from our pool of recruited mentors. So they're able to say, this is the topic that's most exciting to me, and then they're able to see who on our platform will be a best fit for them. We request them into the project. Our mentors always have capacity to accept or reject that project. Then they work with the student over the course of a minimum of 1 semester, most span over the course of the year. So students are going through the research project or research process, mostly for the first time. About 88% of our MME students are connecting with a professional for the very first time. So they're learning to communicate outside their network. It's different than asking your teacher a question when you have someone who is doing this data research every single day, or building that product every single day. So students can connect, they learn not just who that mentor is as a person, but their education pathway. What was something they didn't know before? What career they might have, what company they might work for. So it really starts to demystify what research and STEM looks like. Again, not just in the state of Illinois, but really beyond. Our students then have the opportunity to present at a statewide showcase towards the end, culminating their experience. And then on the mentorship side, we also really look at how we facilitate mentor and mentee relationships. So we want to start to break the narrative of this is someone who's an expert and is going to fill the cup of a student, but really open up the conversation that both partners have something to learn. So with our mentors as well, we lead 2 sessions that we strongly encourage for all of our mentors to go through. Those are best practices in virtual communication. So you may be the top chemist in the state. This does not mean you know how to talk to a high school student, and that's okay. So we will provide you with strategies, sentence starters, ways to help pull information out or build inquiry questions together. And then we also focus on DEIA and trauma-informed mentorship. So really preparing our mentors to be supportive teammates for our students and really support our teachers to help facilitate what's wrong with the classroom.
You know, I just wrote an article probably a month ago, and it was about networking, but it was also about the power of mentorship. And one of the things that we discuss in that article is the whole idea that I think a lot of times people feel like they're imposing on somebody if they're walking in and saying, hey, I'd like to see if you could work with me to further my career, further my education pathway, whatever that is. And what I tell people is that there's very few types of meetings that I always take. But if a young person for some reason reaches out and says, I'm considering this career pathway, I'm considering this educational institution, I want to learn more about what you do, I have never ever said no to one of those. And I think one of the messages for mentors, for mentees rather, people who are being mentored by a mentor or seeking one out, don't feel intimidated, don't feel like an individual is going to be feeling like they're stepping out of their way, because I can tell you all the things that I do in my professional life, it's absolutely one of the most rewarding things I can do.
Absolutely, and I would say we've never had a mentor say my student is over-communicating.
Right.
We always have mentors say, we've signed up to do this. This is virtual, skills-based opportunities to volunteer. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just going into a school, volunteering for a career fair. It's really giving a holistic approach to what relationships can be, to what growth and connection can be. So for our mentors, we hear the same thing, where they're excited to do this, they're able to pass their skills forward, and all of our mentors also say, I wish I had this when I was in high school. I wish that I could have participated.
Well, and I think the other thing is that as a mentor, sometimes it helps keep you young in a way, right? So if you're working with people that are 20, 30 years younger and having conversations about what are their lives like, what are they into, what kind of music are they listening to, it really helps you stay connected to another generation or two. So in so many cases, when we talk to mentors, we say, look, it's not just about the help you're going to give that individual, but it's going to help you grow as a leader as well, and it's really, really important time. Tell us about the type of people that are attracted to mentorship and the type of people. You mentioned you actually recruit mentors. mentor. So what kind of traits do you look for in a mentor?
Yeah, excellent question. So the first question when we usually get that is, do I have to have a certain degree to be a mentor? The answer is no. We actually have found that some of our most beneficial mentor-mentee relationships come from graduate students, PhD candidates, those who are still really immersed in the research process themselves. When we do look towards the corporate side, we look for someone who's excited and eager to share kind of their learning. You do not have to have a 3-year college degree. So if you were an apprentice, if you went to vocational school, you have something to give. And everyone's experience, yeah, exactly. Everyone's experience really shows our students that no path is linear. It's not about going from A to B and then getting down to Z in 10, 15, 20 years. There's a lot of roadmaps that look like just spaghetti falling on a piece of paper, that they go all over the place. So we really value that in our mentor team as well. And our cohort really consists of everything from, again, kind of just out of high school and wanting to give back to their own high school, to someone who's been in the field. One of our STEM Challenge mentors is Chief Medical Officer at Horizon. So again, showing you that busy professionals are excited and eager to give back and inspire the next generation of leaders.
And that definition of professional is a really, really broad definition.
Yeah.
You know, we just had this morning, earlier today, Tony Nicewander, who's the president of a company called IMTS Manufacturing Solutions, was on with us. Tony was a guy that grew up learning welding. Did not have a 4-year education pathway. Makes no apologies for that. He's proud of it. Talked all about that pathway for him. Those to me are just as valuable, maybe more valuable than somebody that chief medical officer, awesome and great that individual is taking some time to give back to somebody that's in need of mentorship, and that's absolutely fantastic. But to your point, you don't have to have that big fancy degree, that big fancy title, that big fancy job to be a good mentor, and it really can be. I didn't even think about someone who just graduated from high school, but certainly if they're a year into whatever came afterwards and can take that experience and shape it in a way that's meaningful to a younger person, a person on a similar pathway, how powerful is that? That is so cool. Talk about just the reason that mentorship is so important. Obviously, you've built this whole program. You're featuring it this week at the Smartforce Summit. Talk about why that whole mentorship approach is so very important.
Yeah, so I think kind of going back to who our students are in the state of Illinois, we want our students to feel inspired to give back. So if they do choose to go off to a 1-year degree or even a 2-year, we want them to come back and be inspired by what's happening in Illinois, so that our ecosystem of innovation continues to thrive. We also really want to build a more inclusive and diverse talent pipeline, and that means that we have to start earlier than students just in college. It means we have to connect with students as early as 9th grade or younger. That's something from our team that we're excited to extend even younger, but to start to really spark interest and not just that exposure to different things. So we also say within our organization, if you find something you don't like, it's still incredibly valuable. You can check that off as, this is not the path I want to pursue, so you're one step closer to finding what really brings you joy and excitement.
Yep.
And so I think for us, it's just about that exposure piece, but having support from a mentor is game-changing. So you're not just feeling on your own, you're really learning alongside someone. You are asking questions to someone who can guide you toward the answer. So you're building skills like collaboration, communication, problem solving, while you're working on something you're already assigned to do. So it's this kind of dual enhancement to the curriculum. It also helps our teachers. So our teachers no longer have to be content experts in 30 different projects.
Right.
If their students are pursuing different things, lets the teacher step back and act as a facilitator to really co-explore and guide the students, and let mentors handle kind of the content expertise and be the sounding board, the brainstorm session. And I would also like to take a step back even further, and overall our mentor-mentee relationships really look at power dynamics as also starting to, again, change that language around someone is only learning from someone because of their age or their experience, really start to bridge that gap with, we have a lot to learn from our young people. They are eager and excited to change the world, and so, again, being in those relationships help both sides.
Every once in a while, someone will ask us in another business that we run, why do you have so many young people that work in the company? And it's like, wow, those are the best people. We learn from them every day, and there's something to be said for a new set of eyes on a problem, not having any preconceived notions about how the world is supposed to work. It really makes for a valuable team member, and really the same thing that you're saying in this particular case is that we need to disassociate the idea that you need to have the big degree, you have to have all the experience in order to have something that's meaningful to somebody. You also talk about getting earlier and earlier in the education pathway, something that is really, really important to me. Some phenomenal work that was done by a guy named Brad, and I'm spacing out his last name, but he is at Hennepin Technical College, Hennepin Community College, just outside of Minneapolis. Did this study as part of a master's degree program, and he looked at what influenced pathways. And one of the things that he found was, especially for girls, they will turn off to certain career pathways earlier and earlier. And it's a little bit different for boys for whatever reason, but they'll decide, an engineering isn't a job for me, or working in manufacturing isn't a job for me. And it doesn't mean that they're saying, I'm going to be a lawyer, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a doctor, or whatever, but they start to turn off to certain career pathways. And so driving that earlier and earlier into the process is really important. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so actually, even more personally, so I came to ISTC from the classroom. So I was a middle school math teacher, and I taught 6th and 7th grade math, and then I was a STEM coordinator at middle school. And I would get students in 6th grade, a lot of my female students,
Yeah.
like everyone's a nice person.
Right.
It's about having not just the teacher that inspires you, but I think that's where that mentorship piece comes back in. It's the validation and the encouragement and the reinforcement of you can do anything. You don't have to do everything,
Right.
but you can do anything. And so kind of finding that. But with exposure early on too, I mean, just having the opportunity to put your hands on something, to experience it, to say, I do or I don't like this, even as young as middle school, absolutely makes a huge difference when we talk about their career trajectory. In our own work specifically, we see confidence as a leading indicator to pursuing the STEM pathway. So again, having that ability to say, I've failed at something, but it's okay, and I've learned from it.
Right.
Or I'm learning as I go through this process, and it's messy and it's chaotic, but I'm thriving. Confidence and building that confidence over time with the support of a mentor is a leading indicator for what that student will choose to do, and we hope of course it's STEM.
Yeah, absolutely. As do we. One of the things that I'm reflecting on as you're saying that is this whole idea of Thomas Edison trying to invent the electrical light bulb, right? And we've all heard that story to where it's almost old. But every time he failed to invent the electric light bulb, he said, "I didn't fail. I just found one more way not to invent the electric light bulb. I need to find another way." And to your point, failure is all about this pathway. It's all about finding our way through life, and failure is it's an important part of learning, and it is okay to fail, and letting people know that it's okay to fail is really valuable. And it sounds like you've mentioned that a few times now, like that is kind of endemic in the entire program, is fair to say.
Yeah, so the Mentor Matching Engine as a whole, it runs as its own program for independent research. It also hosts as a platform for other programs. So the STEM Challenge specifically works with corporate partners and students, kind of connecting them on an industry-specific challenge. So we may sit down with a healthcare company, we ask the question of, what are you actually working on? So instead of this being a cooked-up idea for students, we say, what is actually relevant to the work and the mission of your company? We then take that back as a curriculum, roll it out to our teachers and students, and then students work in team-based challenges through the STEM Challenge alongside mentors from that company. What's slightly different about this kind of model, one, the students are in teams, so they're mimicking kind of what this product design really looks like in the real world, but they're also working with mentors from across the company. So now they're seeing, okay, there are people in legal, there are people in HR, there's people in the biotech team, and we all have to collaborate. So they're seeing it kind of real time. But with that process, it very much follows the human-centered design process or design thinking, and that's very conducive to failure. So saying, you actually have to go back to the start over and over. You have to empathize, you have to do research, you have to understand your user, their wants and needs. And then when you test it and they say that it doesn't work, you need to go back and try again. And so that process really lends itself to promoting failure as a learning tool rather than as something we learn from. So the STEM Challenge allows us really a conducive environment to help our students see that as a structure to better innovation.
Absolutely. So trying, succeeding, maybe failing, learning, figuring out what you like, figuring out what you don't like, figuring out how you take your skills, how you take your gifts and put them to work in a way that adds value. You mentioned something a little bit earlier that you actually started out in the classroom, and now you're doing the job that you have now. Now you're in the position you have now with IST. Tell us about that transition. What made you decide to step away from the classroom into the current role? That's curious.
Yeah, so the big part was a move. So I was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then moved back to Chicago, and I'm originally from Chicagoland area. So at that time, I kind of evaluated, do I want to stay in the classroom and continue on the kind of educator-teacher route, or do I want to kind of see what else is out there? And so I found ISTC, At the time, I thought it was too good to be true. I was like, there's no way that students are connecting with corporate mentors and seeing real challenges and actually building connections and networks, and this is just amazing. And I joined the team, and sure enough, it was very true, and I loved having a hand in that. Over the years, I think we've evolved so much. I've been with the organization about 3 years, and so I've been a nice balance point to say, I still remember being in the classroom.
Right.
I still remember that if you ask me to do something extra that's a burden, it will not happen. And if you bring me something that is going to excel me and my students, I'm going to dive right into it. So we try and really balance that, whether it's our professional development, our ongoing support of teachers, what we ask of our teachers to help support our mentors and our students, etc. We really try and make sure that the teacher is at the center of the conversation along with the student, so that there's a full learning team behind the student experience.
So, and I've got to believe that experience as a classroom teacher brings a tremendous amount of credibility when you're getting in front of a group of teachers and trying to build that. Is that fair to say?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think the first teacher PD that I led as well, I had it in the back of my mind, you have to impress yourself just as much as you have to impress the teachers because you were in their seats. And I would say a lot of the tools we use to support our students as well, something like differentiation or scaffolding, or we have a big complex problem, how do we start to break it down for our students and even go through something like a literacy 3-read strategy. Those are things that I pull directly from the classroom and can offer our teachers. We also work with coaches for our STEM Challenge program, so we work with educators that are still kind of active in the education community that have 20 plus years as classroom teachers that are now retired and working in different capacities, and they support our teachers as well. So there's always someone kind of who has their background in mind, how full curricular ties in, so none of our programs should ever feel like a burden, it should feel like an enhancement to what they're doing.
And almost like scaffolding mentorship, right? So you've got mentors that are working with students, you have teachers working with students, you have retired teachers that are mentoring teachers, and it really shows the power of mentorship, it really shows the power of setting that example. One of the things we love asking folks about, Becky, on the Tech Ed podcast is those specific examples. And I think those are the ones that can really inspire people about the work that you're doing. So when you look at all the work you're doing in mentorship, do you have a story or two about a student that was particularly affected by the program?
Yeah, I would say one that stands out to me most recently, so last summer we launched and piloted a brand new program called the 6x3 Project. So it took kind of the fundamentals of our STEM Challenge program, which is that corporate-based challenge, and it condensed it down to 6 weeks. But we as an organization had to recognize what do we do really well and where are we lacking for our students. So we provide mentorship, connections, and ongoing community very strongly. We teach design thinking really strongly. But what we lack is when our students kind of reach the end of the road, they often go towards tech solutions, and we don't have the ability to build that out. When our students finish, we ask them to present, and we don't explicitly teach in a presentation or entrepreneurship or business.
Sure.
So we actually partnered with 2 other nonprofits, Code Nation and the Gray Matter Experience, and we were able to create a holistic approach through an immersive summer program. So we worked with Horizon Therapeutics as our kind of fundamental corporate challenge. They were working on a problem specific to patients with thyroid eye disease, and we had a student that was kind of going through the process. We had to do it virtually because it was still kind of very much heavy in the pandemic. But we had one student in particular who, as she was navigating tech issue after tech issue, and then when we debriefed with her at the end, just the main takeaways that she had were things we would never have predicted. So she felt like she was able to learn about the company, that they were consistently innovating, and that she felt like her mentors gave her the vibe that even when they meet a patient need, they don't stop there. They continue to innovate, they continue to try and make a difference in someone's life. And she thought it was so cool that you could use things like coding, you could use things like business modeling and entrepreneurship, and you could use things like design to really transform someone's life. And so that was just a big takeaway that, of course, we wanted her to get that, but for her to explicitly articulate that she learned about this company that they were doing it, hopefully that stays in her mind, and that when she goes off and does the amazing things that she does, she thinks about that company. Maybe she applies there one day. That would be our hope as well. But kind of understanding that bigger picture of Illinois ecosystem, that there are amazing opportunities here, and we want our students to feel embedded in them and a part of them and feel an identity that's connected to them. So she definitely embodied all of them.
Amazing opportunities, and to your point, whether she decides on a career in technology or not, at least that's a career that she knows that she can have. And that's so important, is this exposure and the experience and learning that we're talking about here today at the International Manufacturing Technology Technology Show. Having an awesome conversation, by the way, with Becky Goldberg, who is the Director of Education for the Illinois Science and Technology Coalition. So really fascinating things that you're discussing here, Becky. One of the things in that last conversation that we just had, in your last answer at the very beginning, that kind of piqued my interest, and I think credit to you and to the organization, was you reached a point where you realized, hey, there's a need on the part of students that we're not in a position to fill, and rather than going out and making this huge investment in a new coding program, you look for a partner that can help you do that. And it's really, as we look at how quickly technology is changing, even going back to being a mentor and recognizing that it's not enough to know something and know something that was important 10, 15 years ago and have it still be relevant. We're here at IMTS in large part because we're learning about all these new technology moving so incredibly quickly. And you took the time to find a partner that could deliver that learning as opposed to inventing it yourself. Tell us about the reasoning for deciding to go about that process and deciding to look for a partner as opposed to making the investment on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the nonprofit world too, I think that's an important function of collaboration. That as nonprofits, we have to recognize when someone else is doing something amazing and they have the expertise, call on them, so that no one's reinventing the wheel, but that we really, the same way we leverage mentorship in our programs, we leverage what already exists through partners that we can uplift and amplify and really show not only our students but our communities, these are all the resources available to you. So maybe students that were typically our students got to see other programs, and maybe they're pursuing something in that route. And we all win when we do that, right? When we help students see what they're interested and excited about, and when they find avenues that they connect with, it's beneficial for the state, it's beneficial for the city that they're coming from their school communities. So really everyone wins when there's nonprofit collaboration. I would say internally though, I definitely credit our previous director who kind of had this brainchild of saying, we can't offer this, we don't have capacity or bandwidth to go out and learn a whole new coding series that we can teach or invest in deep dives in entrepreneurship, but we recognize that we have partners in our space that can uplift those programs and embed them in ours. And we were able to do that pilot program last year. This year we already grew, so we had 2 cohorts, and then next year we already have a 3rd confirmed cohort, and that will be in middle school. So all of them bring in other partners. So I'm going to shout out Code Your Dreams as well, who's our 2nd partner, along with Baxter International. And then looking forward, we will be doing a challenge with the CME group, so in kind of the financial side of things, with another additional group of nonprofits. So lots of nonprofit collaboration, and I think it's really essential when you are in a nonprofit to recognize where are others doing amazing things and how do you partner and amplify.
Yep, and great words, the use of leverage. I love that. I could talk about leverage for the next half hour. The use of partnership, absolutely important. We're so glad we had the opportunity to partner with you, Becky, and this discussion. It's been a great conversation. We're going to finish up. We've just got a minute or so left with one question, and it's the question we ask every single guest here on the Tech Ed Podcast, and that is, if you had one piece of advice for a high school sophomore, what would that be?
Oh, I feel like it goes back to find things you don't like. It's just as valuable as finding things you do like. So try lots of things, get your hands on things. I would say even just today, me walking around, these are technologies that I did not see when I was in high school or even in college. And so exposing yourself to multiple opportunities and being honest with yourself about what's bringing you joy in the process, what's challenging you so you're actually growing and changing as a young person, and then pursue things that bring you excitement and joy as you go on whatever path you do.
Pursue things that bring you excitement and joy. We certainly did that for the last half hour, talking all about STEM education, talking about the great work that you're doing. Becky,